Hi everyone, it's John back again with another inbox review for modelers. You're probably going to get sick and tired of Typhoons, but I'm doing a third Typhoon inbox review now. This is the Marquee 72nd scale Hawker Typhoon Mark 1B with the car door version. I've got an image up here of what the car door version Typhoon looked like. This was the early version of the Mark 1B. Which were actually originally a Mark 1A, but fitted with the cannon armament into the wings, and then the bubble canopy was introduced on the later variants of the Mark 1B, sort of late 1942. But the car door versions were still being used as late as early 1943, so it's quite interesting that you can actually get models of this kit. So anyway, we'll go into the review. We'll start off with the original release of this particular kit that I'm reviewing today. The original release was done by Frog in 1964. It's a bit of a rarity, this kit. It's quite difficult to find, and if you do find it, it's usually hanging from it as a large, high price tag. I'm not sure what the average retail price of a Frog kit is, but if you can get one, I'm expecting them to be at least 20-30 quid. They were limited release, they only made a few thousand, and then in '64 they actually went over to a new type of limited release kits called Airlines, and Frog started producing the Typhoon 1B car door version in 1966 under this guise. It's still the same original Frog kit, but they released it under this limited edition range called Airlines. And then after the '66 release, I think it was on sale for maybe a year or so, it disappeared off the shelves, never to be seen again until the 1999 release from Marquee. This is the same model as the Frog kit that was released originally in 1964. And Marquee is actually a Soviet Union, Russian-made company. The company's based probably in Moscow, I would have thought, somewhere in the Soviet Union, and it tends to be on sale in the USA quite readily, and in the Soviet Union obviously, and in the Ukraine. The kit's very popular in those three areas of the world. You can actually get them second hand on social media sites like eBay and Amazon, maybe a couple of other sites, and you might also find a few here and there in car boot sales, which, you know, they are about, and they're not that expensive because, to be honest with you, they're not that good either. But 1964 original release Frog kits, they were all much of a muchness. You know, they were competing with companies like Limburg, Airfix, early Revell of the area, of that era, and they were on a par with the kits that were on release at the time. But by modern standards, this kit is not that great. So we'll leave you with that nice image there of the Typhoon 1B, just peeling over with the invasion stripes there, and then I'll just pull the camera round so you can see the kit that I'm reviewing today. This is the Marquee model. There we go, that's better. This is the Marquee model that I'm actually reviewing today. Its serial number is MQ7202. 72nd scale, and this is the only example I can see of the ex-Frog kit or Marquee. The box is a bit battered, sorry about that, there's not a lot I can do. We'll open the box and see what the score is inside. I'm not expecting too much of this model because, yeah, I think I paid around about £1.50 for it. And we'll take everything out of the sprue, out of the box, and we'll have a bloody good laugh, shall we? Yeah, this is class. Right, we'll go through the instruction leaflet first, because the instruction leaflet is always a good place to start. This is a very typical Frog plan, although it's not on a Frog format instruction leaflet layout, but the actual plan themselves, the actual steps and the drawings, they are very, very Frog, definitely Frog. This kit is definitely a Frog model, and they've just taken the plans directly from the original kit. You've even got some of the Frog keys there for safety tips: do not glue, cut with a knife, use a heated knife to apply parts and hold them in place. You've got 7 steps to build this kit, and to be honest with you, there's not an awful lot of parts to assemble in each step. Step 1 is the pilot and pilot seat. Step 2 is the propeller and the retainer. Step 3 is the undercarriage sub-assembly, and you do not glue here, but you use a heated knife to there you go. Use a heated knife. You've got to chop that bit down there on the top of the undercarriage leg, and use a heated knife to hold the wheel in place. So that's basically the sub-assembly. Step 4 is the wing assembly. You've also got to cut out the location holes for the rocket projectiles. Very simple construction. Not a huge amount to do on this kit. It will probably build up quite quickly indeed. Step 5 is pilot into the fuselage assembly with the oil cooler in place there, and the air filter, propeller and tail wheel installation. And then in step 6 you put the airframe together with the cockpit canopy and the tailplane. An interesting thing about this kit is that you put the aerial into the fuselage, and then you fit the canopy over the top of the aerial before you glue it into place on top of the aircraft. That's an interesting feature, because it's actually how the real plane was. And section 7 you fix the undercarriage and doors with the pitot tube and all the armament fit for the rocket projectiles there. So it's quite an easy to follow. It's really basic. The kit is really basic, not very many parts, and it will build up very quickly. And the instruction leaflet is very easy to follow, and it is printed in Russian, but it's also printed in English, which is nice. This is a paint guide for the 2 different aircraft that you can model from this kit. They're both circa 1942. One's early 42 and one's late 42. Yeah, the paint guides there, extra dark sea grey with dark slate grey, medium sea grey for the underside, and then you have like a sky colour. I think that's for the band around the fuselage. So not a huge amount to worry about there. It's interesting to note actually that the version that they've got covered here on the paint plan is actually the one with the bomb racks in place. You can just see the bomb racks there. The kit doesn't come with bomb racks, it comes with rockets, and they're not even mentioned on the paint plan, so I have no idea what colour to paint the rocket projectiles, but I would paint them whatever colour. Normally I think they would probably be green, and the rocket racks would probably be the same colour as the underside of the aircraft. That's what usually happens. So anyway, that's the instruction leaflet. Very basic, very easy to follow. Next we'll deal with the decals, and dealing with the decals is not going to be too difficult. Cartograph they are not. They're produced by a company called Pro Decals. 1999 registration on them. I'll be honest with you, the decals are pretty terrible. The large low-vis roundels that go on the top wing seem to be the best. Actually, the fin flashes aren't too bad either, but the rest of them, they carry a very heavy and very shiny, thick-set sheen carrier film, which you're going to have to gloss varnish this kit. I would say gloss varnish it seriously shiny before you apply the transfers on this kit, and that's if they don't disintegrate when you take them off. But the register on these smaller roundels, especially where the red dots fit into the middle, is pretty terrible. It's pretty bad. Yeah, I would try and find some aftermarket decals, to be honest with you, with this kit. But that's the decals. The decals aren't great. And we'll deal now with the sprues. There are actually 4 sprues. One of the interesting things about this marquee kit is they are obviously frog sprues. You can see the frog. Yeah, I'm a frog kit screaming at you. But they've done it in the style of Matchbox, where you've got 2 different colours. It's like a 2 different colour kit, so that the younger generation doesn't have to paint them, which is quite interesting. We'll deal first with the cockpit canopy. The cockpit canopy usually defines the quality of the kit, and I'll be quite honest with you, the quality of this canopy is pretty terrible. The moulding on it is pretty bad. It is sort of the right shape, but it's a frog canopy from the 60s, but it has a touch of what the Russian manufacturers tend to do a lot with plastic clear canopies, is that they make them not very clear. It's quite hazy. You can't really see an awful lot through it in terms of picking up fine detail. In the other two reviews that I did, I could actually see my fingerprints through the cockpit canopies, and I can't on this one. The prints just disappear. So the actual canopy itself is very thick. It does distort quite a lot of the light that goes through it, so you're not going to see a huge amount of detail. But to be honest with you, there's not a lot of detail in this kit anyway, and there's not an awful lot that you're going to be able to see through that gap in that interior. You're not going to see a huge amount. We'll deal first with the black sprues. The quality of the moulding on this kit is pretty dire, I'll be honest with you. The plastic is very thick. It's what I call the soft plastic type. It's quite pliable. So if you bend it too much, you can bend it to get it to fit better. But if you do bend it too much, you'll get the stress marks, the white line across the part. So you don't want to do too much of that. But it will bend quite reasonably. This particular part has got quite a lot of issues. This particular sprue, has got quite a lot of issues with it. There's a lot of flash on the parts. There's a lot of what I would call injection flash left on the protrusions of the parts, and the mouldings are really waxy. It's a bit like they're made out of wax, to be honest with you. They're really poor. I think you're going to have to do quite a lot of preparatory work with this kit. So after you've sanded down, you've then got to try and attack it with some filler, because I don't know if you can see very well on this camera view here. I don't think you can see that well. Let's see if I can do something with this light. Let's do something with the light on here. You might be able to see it better now. But basically, the aileron on that part, I'll tell you what, you can't see it on the camera at all. Let's shine a torch on it so you can see it. Basically, the aileron, you can't see that either, can you? That's a shame. I'm trying my best here. The aileron part on this upper wing has got a trench right the way along it. It's actually an injection sinkhole, but it's a trench. It's not just a hole. And it goes virtually the full length of the aileron, and you're going to have to attack that with filler and sand it down smooth. But to be honest with you, there's no surface detail on that aileron whatsoever, so you're not going to lose anything at all. The kit has raised panel lines. You can't really see them too well there, which is a shame, but the kit has raised panel lines, but they're not that pronounced, so they'll sand down quite quickly. And then if you want to go to all the bother of rescribing to make the lines recessed is up to you really, but to be honest with you, the actual quality of the parts on this kit, I don't think it's worth it. The tailplane in Pennage has serious issues with it. I'm not sure if you can see that, but basically there are lots of injection mouldings on the surfaces of both those tailplanes, and they'll need surfacing, they'll need sanding down, taking away completely, and you'll lose all the raised, what a shame, you'll lose all the raised panel lines on those. But what you'll also lose is the fabric covering texture, which they have tried to recreate a little bit, but you'll lose all of that when you sand this and sort all these parts out. But the real disappointment for me is the oil cooler and the filter, because the oil cooler and the filter, I don't know if you can see it very well there, but it looks like it's made out of wax. The filter itself is so badly moulded. I don't think it's badly moulded for the kit. I think that's just the way that the actual mould is. But the reproduction of that filter is so poor that it just looks like somebody's dropped a blob of wax on the sprue and then just left it to dry. But that's the first sprue. So serious issues with this kit. There's a lot of preparatory work and a lot of modelling work to deal with this model. The second black sprue doesn't look too bad. On this side, the undercarriage itself is a little bit basic, and there's not a huge amount of detail involved with that undercarriage parts. The oleo legs especially. The propeller itself, yeah, there's some flash on it which will probably need to be taken off. I wouldn't want to have the propeller looking like that when it's on the finished kit, but it looks quite well crafted. It's certainly as good as any other Typhoon model that I've seen prior to 1990. The upper surfaces of the wing with the Hispano cannons there, that looks like it's not too badly recreated. It's not too bad, but the raised panel lines, again, they'll have to be sanded down smooth. The aileron on this one is fine. There's no trench mark on it whatsoever, so that's not too bad. But then we turn the sprue over, and we have some sinkholes from the mouldings on the inside edge of the undercarriage doors, which again they'll have to be removed. So there's quite a bit of work to do on that as well. And then we come to the guy who flies the plane. I don't know if you can see him very well there, but he looks like a chimpanzee. He is covered in flesh. He is crouched down like he's on the toilet, and which is interesting because we'll get to the pilot seat in a minute. He is scratched down like he looks like he's going to the toilet, and he is so badly crafted as a human being, he actually looks like a chimpanzee. His flying goggles look like chimpanzee's ears. He is really bad, and I don't think there is any way on earth I was ever going to use him. We'll do this sprue first. This is the first of the yellow sprues. You've got all the RPG rockets with the rocket rails here. The rocket rails look a little bit big. And the rockets themselves look a little bit small in relation to the other kits that I've reviewed. But the other parts themselves don't look too bad. Again, you've got raised panel lines on this model. The wheel wells there aren't too fantastic. They're quite heavily set cast, and the detail on them is waxy. It looks very heavy. But the fuselage itself isn't too bad. You've even got the fillet reinforcements, which are quite pronounced on this. You might have to sand them down. They're a little bit big actually, but you might have to sand them down a little bit to make them more flush. But basically the Typhoon was given a reinforcement fillet retrofit to make the tail much stronger. It didn't resolve the issues because the aircraft had a tendency of catastrophic failure around the tail, which also usually involved the fatality of the pilot. But it is reproduced on this kit, which is quite good when you think that the kit itself is coming up for 50, it's about 53 years old now. The tail wheel is quite faithfully reproduced. It's a little bit, it's not as accurate as some of the other kits that I've seen, but yeah, it is definitely there. There's also, this is really interesting, there's also an enormous locating pin here, and I don't think it's a locating pin. I think it's something to do with the injection moulding, because it's not on the other side, and that, I don't know if you can see it there, but that is going to have to be removed completely before you can put the oil cooler and the filter in place. So that is a serious issue. There's no detail whatsoever apart from the locating pins on the interior, but that is quite common for a lot of models that were manufactured and designed in the 60s. The Series 1 Airfix kit is actually, it has two location pins on both sides, and you just fit the seat into it and then pile the pilot into the seat. So this is very reminiscent of 60s design, but the seat the pilot sits on there, you remember I said the pilot looks like he sat on a toilet? Well, the seat looks like a toilet as well. The seat is terrible. Terrible seat. It has no bulletproof separate part clipped to it, and the seat, the bracket that goes to the back of the seat is the same width as the seat, which is definitely not correct. It should be slightly wider. So that is a serious issue as well. But there is one plus in this kit's reproduction, is the actual exhaust stubs. They're quite nicely rendered. They're I would say they're better than the Academy kit, but they're not a separate part like the Airfix new toolkit, but they're certainly better than the Airfix first generation model. They're quite clearly defined. That's not too bad. So that's a plus for that. The fourth sprue is just as the same as the third one, but the wheels look a little bit big and the detail on them is pretty terrible. The rocket rails on this side look just as big as they were on the other side, and the rockets themselves look a little bit too small. The raised panel lines on the underside of the wing, they're quite fine, so they should sand down quite easily. And again, with the fuselage, it's exactly the same as the other side. But there is one thing else that I'd like to point out. The Typhoon had fabric-covered rudders and fabric-covered rudder and fabric-covered elevators. And the fabric-covered rudder on this particular kit is really nicely moulded. I'm hoping you can make that out there, but it's really nicely moulded, and that's going to come up really nice. And it's a full rudder on one side of the fuselage. You can see there. The other side does not include the rudder, but this is the full rudder on this side, which is quite nice. The wheels look a bit heavy and big. They look like some boy racers tried to put 22-inch alloys on his Ford Fiesta. They look pretty terrible. They're quite big, and the moulding recreation on them is quite waxy again. So there you go. That's the model review for the Marquee kit. Not too good. But you have to understand that the kit is very old. The mould is very, very old, 50 odd years old. So it has stood the test of time, and it's no worse than probably what it was originally, when it was originally released in 1964. Just want to give you the technical rundown on the kit now. The kit is a Marquee Hawker Typhoon Mark 1B car door version, and it's built in 1/72 scale. And its original release from Frog had a release date of 1964, but the Marquee kit was released in 1999. The model itself builds up to 5¼ inches long, 7 inches in span, and 1½ inches high when it's sat on its undercarriage legs. The kit comes in 32 yellow and black plastic parts and 1 transparent part on 2 yellow and 2 black sprues, with a canopy loose in the cockpit, totaling 33 parts in all. Retail prices start around about £7 for the Marquee kit. I would have thought quite an awful lot more for a Frog kit, but they do rise to about £15 for the Marquee kit from certain sellers, and the kit's usually only available and sold openly in the shops in the USA or the Ukraine. But it is made in the Soviet Union, but I haven't got any information on what the availability is like inside the Soviet Union. You can get this kit on social media sites like eBay, Amazon. I've also seen it in car boot sales occasionally here and there, but it is quite rare and difficult to get in England. But you can usually get, if you really want one, you can usually get it off eBay quite easily. The overall impressions of the kit is it's the only 72nd scale car door version Typhoon available for less than 15 quid. The kit belies its Frog origins with the raised panel lines and Frog style instructions and very Frog laid out sprues, but the kit is somewhat of a rarity, and it should be respected as a very early generation kit that wasn't actually that bad by today's standards. Sorry, it wasn't actually that bad for 60s standards, but it's really poor by today's standards. It is available by 2 other companies. The 1B car door variant is modelled by a company called Brengun and Pavla, and the Pavla models are of better quality, but I haven't seen either of them to review, but I have seen the sprues in photograph form of the Brengun kit, and the Brengun kit it's probably on a par with, I would say, the Academy model, but it doesn't have the options that the Academy model has, and in my opinion, I think the Academy model is, for the money, is probably a better option, unless you're an experienced modeller and you want to build the particular Brengun covered version. I haven't seen the sprues for the Pavla kit, but the Pavla kit is dear, so I'm guessing they're going to be quite good. The Bren Gun kit retails for at least £17, and the Pavla kit usually crops out around 25. So if you're after a 1B car door version, you can get hold of one of these. Don't be put off terribly by the fact that the moulds are terrible. Yeah, the moulds are terrible, but you know they're not. You're not going to end up with a kit that doesn't look like a Typhoon, because it will. It will be interesting to see how this kit comes out when I build this kit, and I'm going to do a follow-up video to explain why I'm doing 3 reviews on Typhoons. So if you're after a 1B car door version Typhoon in 72nd scale, and you do find one of these, and you fancy a bash, good luck, because it's going to be a lot of preparatory work. So hopefully this video has been of some use to you, and I'll see you again for the next one. Happy modelling. Bye bye.